All right, I want to talk to you a little bit about what is happening over in Ukraine. First of all, the Kremlin is warning against panic buying as food prices are rising over in Russia. They're saying no hoarding, no panic buying. This is going to start happening all over the world. Please be prepared for it. I went over it in hour number 1. If you didn't hear that in the first hour, make sure you grab the podcast. So what is Putin really after? Who is Vladimir Putin? What is his game? So I read a book called Putin's Playbook recently by Rebekah Koffler. She is a U.S. intelligence expert. She was from behind the Iron Curtain. She came to America when she was young. After 9/11, she decided that she wanted to help protect her new country. So she went to work with the Central Intelligence Agency, and she was part of the red teams that we've heard so much about with the Pentagon trying to war game. I have to tell you, I read her book, and I think this is one of the people that I hope everybody is listening to in Washington, because I think she really understands Putin. And if I may say, Rebekah, you had me at Alexander Dugin. Welcome.
Thank you, Glenn. It's such an honor to be here with you and your audience.
Thank you. So, Rebekah, tell us a little bit about your background so people know exactly who you are and how you know these things.
Of course. So I was born and raised behind the Iron Curtain in the former Soviet Union. And my parents were anti-communist. They didn't agree with the Soviet socialist system, and they were raising me to go to America one day, the land of freedom and opportunity and justice. And so I immigrated in 1989 to America, and then after September 11th, as you said, I went to serve in the intelligence community, and because I wanted to help protect my country against foreign threats, and I knew that sooner or later, even though the Soviet Union collapsed, it will emerge, as a foreign threat. I didn't know how soon it was going to happen, but there we are with the conflict in Ukraine. And it's not really about Ukraine, Glenn. It's a proxy war between Russia and the United States for control in Eurasia.
Okay. Explain to people what Eurasia is in case they don't know.
Sure. Eurasia is the biggest landmass. It's basically Russia occupies the center of Eurasia, and China is up there, obviously, and more than Russia, it's what the Russians believe is strategic buffer that they have relied on for centuries for their security. Including in that strategic buffer is Ukraine, Moldova, Belarus, Georgia, and a bunch of what we call stans. And with the collapse of the Soviet Union, the United States security establishment assumed, I don't know really why, but assumed that these countries are going to be democracies. And nothing, could be further from the truth, because there's nothing in Russia's history or in the history of those other countries that points to the fact that democracy is even a viable system of governance. And so at this point, we're basically on a collision course geopolitically with Russia, because the United States wants to make sure that we call the shots in that area of the world, not China, not Russia, but we do. And the Russians, of course, want to make sure that they keep their security perimeter in their control and not us. And that's what this conflict is all about.
So, but if you look at the west side of Eurasia, you would see Poland. And almost every time Russia has come under attack, it's come through Poland. Don't they look at that as a gateway still and want Poland?
You are exactly correct. So the Russians, every war except the Mongol-Tatar yoke back in 1238 came from the West. And this is why exactly Putin fears NATO. He has been talking about the red lines, right? So he wants to effectively ensure that he has Ukraine back into his orbit. And then depending on what happens with this conflict, obviously the Baltics would be next on the target list. Now, Poland and the Baltics, the threshold for Putin's invading those countries is much higher because they're NATO members.
Correct.
Right?
Yes.
But ultimately, you're right. You mentioned, Dugin, and there's the whole school of thought, the Atlanticism versus Eurasianism. It's basically the perennial sort of struggle between the giants. And make no mistake, Putin wants to make sure he makes Russia great again, and he views himself and the Russians view themselves as a superpower on par with the United States and not a junior partner as they feel that they've been treated.
All right. So this weekend, Putin used a hypersonic missile, which, as far as I can tell, talking to military experts, the reason to use or to have a hypersonic missile is for long range because it gets there so fast and you can't shoot it out. So he was using it, though, in Ukraine, which to me just seems like signaling we've got a lot more. And America, we do have the hypersonic missile and we could put a nuke on it or whatever, and we can hit you and you can't stop us. Am I reading that right?
You're 100% correct, Glenn. And I dispute the Pentagon's assessment that it's not an escalation. It's totally an escalation. As you said, this is a dual-capable system. You can put a conventional warhead on it, or you can put a nuclear warhead on it. So the way that this conflict started, if you remember, Putin not only assembled 190,000 troops on the border, all but encircling Ukraine, but also he conducted a nuclear exercise. And so he has been steadily climbing the escalation ladder, step by step, and we are right now on the trajectory to nuclear warfare. So he's signaling, you're correct, he's strategic messaging to us, I have high tolerance for nuclear warfare, and you don't. I have this particular weapon that has never been used in combat before, and you don't. And it's nearly impossible to intercept. And so for the Pentagon to say that this is not escalation, they completely fail to understand who their strategic opponent is, Vladimir Putin, how conniving and how manipulative he is. And they're totally not prepared, Glenn.
All right.
So what if Russia uses this weapon? We are now struggling to really grasping at straws to what to do with them. And it's very evident to everybody.
So is this a possible way of, because as I understand it, Putin believes in escalation to de-escalation. In other words, ramp it up fast to scare the living bejesus out of people, maybe even using a tactical nuke, so the rest of the world will come to the bargaining table and say, okay, let's work things out. Is that possible? Is that possible? What's happening, and especially with the hyper weapon, instead of using a tactical nuke, he uses this.
Yes, absolutely. You just articulated Russia's nuclear doctrine, escalate to de-escalate, that was developed specifically on Putin's orders for an eventual conflict. The Russians believe that sooner or later, a war between the United States and Russia is inevitable. Mark these words, inevitable, I quote. And because they fear U.S. conventional superiority, they believe that they overmatch us in tactical nukes, because the ratio right now is 1 to 10, with Russia having 2,000 tactical nukes, and we have only 200. And this is exactly why Putin wants, or plans rather, or envisions crossing the nuclear threshold by popping a tactical nuke somewhere in Europe or in Ukraine, in order for us to get confused, stand down, and really cause like a strategic pause. And in the meantime, he would want to move in and decapitate Ukraine, remove Zelensky from power as he was planning to.
I mean, you would think, the rest of the world has looked at nukes for 50 years now, at least, and went, this is crazy. I mean, there's no way to win this. We won through mutually assured destruction. Why does he think that a tactical nuke wouldn't garner a massive response from the rest of the world just because he has more nukes?
Here's why, Glenn, because the Russians have been watching and paying attention very closely to what our defense policy is. And if you remember, under President Obama, we had the initiative Global Zero. We want to zero out our nuclear capability. All this talk, Putin understands that we have very low pain threshold. We can't even talk about nukes, without really kind of like making it sound like we are absolutely not going to go there. But that is exactly why he wants to use it, okay? Because he knows that we will not use it, or he thinks, rather, that we will not use it. And that is why he is planning to do this, because he believes that we don't have the cojones, if you will, to respond or even preempt him.
So are you predicting that he will use at least a tactical nuke?
Okay, so the threshold for using those is high. Okay, it has to be a very specific battlefield scenario where Putin feels so cornered, like a rat, like that rat from his childhood that he was talking about. He's in the corner, and believe me, right now he does feel that way because things are not going well for Vladimir Putin. He has completely miscalculated the Ukrainian people's will to fight, the leadership of President Zelensky, and so if he perceives that we are about to intervene, we being NATO and the United States, on behalf of Ukraine, at that point, he will feel like a loss is inevitable. That would be the scenario where he would use that.
Holy cow. Okay, Rebekah Koffler is talking to us. She is the author of Putin's Playbook. I can't recommend it highly enough. I mean, I read it, finished, I think, last week. It's really, truly tremendous to give you a real insight into Putin and what you're dealing with. And especially she goes into Alexander Dugin, which very few people do. And she understands that madness as well.